Hi everyone, welcome back to this series on a very opinionated ASP.NET Core architecture. This is video session number 2 on static code analysis. So now we're actually going to start getting into things. Video 1, a lot longer than I wanted it to be, and it was really just a lot of setup stuff, or just some very basics. If you skipped it, you missed nothing. You really didn't miss a whole ton. All right, so here is what we're going over today. We're going to go ahead and add static code analysis to the project that we started in the previous session. So as far as static code analysis goes in .NET, we have quite a few options. There's stuff built into .NET itself. There are Roslyn analyzers that we can add through NuGet packages, and then we can start controlling this through a single file, so we don't need extensions or any of that fun stuff. Now before we actually start, just kind of closing on this, just a reminder, everything I'm going through in this series, these are all very opinionated. These are my personal opinions of things that I really like within the .NET ecosystem, and also just certain ways that we're going to do things. So today starts to get a little bit more opinionated with some of the features that I like, and you'll go ahead and see that. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask either here in these the YouTube video comments or on any of the social medias. You can find me generally Blue Sky, LinkedIn. Direct link to those on my site at programmeral.com. All right, with that stuff out of the way, let's actually get back into Visual Studio. So you can kind of see over here, I have, let me zoom in. I just went and copied from the 01-initial setup folder. So copied directly into here, and we're starting fresh. So same as what we had in the past. So if we're going to go ahead and add some static code analysis, the very first thing, the absolute easiest thing that we can do is go into the feedback, or into the CS project file for this feedback app, and we're just going to add a couple of properties, and I'm just going to copy paste from my notes over here on the other screen. And you can see that we have a couple of things that are all just going to be built in. So we'll talk about this first one in a second, but the middle one, that's the important one, enabling .NET analyzers. So there are a handful of analyzers just already built into .NET for us, and we just have to enable them. Fun fact, this is actually just one of a handful of different analyzer flags that we can enable in our C# projects. The other ones are a little more specific. So for example, if you're using like AOT compilation, right, anything for ahead of time, there's some stuff for forcing, JSON serialization to always use, the source generated serialization instead of reflection, stuff like that. If you're not using AOT, you probably don't need those. And honestly, if you're using AOT, majority of the time, you probably don't even need to do that. That's a whole separate can of worms we're not really going to talk about. Just wanted to throw that out there. So if you're familiar with like FXCop, these analyzers right here, these are basically the replacement to FXCop. That is what Microsoft has said, or at least someone somewhere at some point has said that from Microsoft. So definitely very easy, very quick thing to go ahead and enable. This next one down here, enforce code style in build. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't actually know what it's doing. I've never looked into it. It's always been on my list. I saw the name. I thought, yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and leave it, and never looked back at it. It hasn't hurt. It's probably doing something good. One of these days, I'll look into it. And this last one, treat warnings as errors. Okay, this is where the whole opinionated thing comes into play. I think that for a brand new application, you should avoid any warnings, any errors, anything like that. One of the things that comes up is if you have a project that has 100 warnings, right? Some of those might actually be a real error in your application. You don't know, right? None of us know. When you have so many, they just pile up and you ignore them. They just become noise in the background that you deal with. So if you have a brand new application, it's worthwhile to just say, no, we're just going to be strict about this. We're going to force it. Any warnings we have to treat as errors. We're going to have to fix them, right? A lot of those warnings, very, very easy to fix. And honestly, if you're willing to just spend a decent amount of time, you can get through them pretty quickly. So the example that I give is, hey, let's say you have some application that you've been working on for a number of years, right? Usually at work, that kind of thing. And this application has so many warnings popped up over that time. You can probably convince someone to let you spend 2-4 hours every sprint just working on these, right? Just get a ticket on the board at the start of the sprint. Someone gets to work on them, cycle through the team. Eventually, you'll get through them. And you'll get through them, I think, quicker than you really think. it'll take. So once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and enable this flag, and there you go. Now you're enforcing some safety. Now, yes, I get the downside is that this does mean that there's some more work that you have to do initially, but that's going to be a lot of this opinionated stuff that I'm talking about. It's more work now to save you a ton of work later. That's the goal. The other thing I want to bring up is that this treat warnings as errors goes really, really helps out all of this nullable stuff that we have right here. So we haven't really used any of that. That stuff will pop up throughout multiple sessions. But I really think that these two in combination really help remove a large class of possible errors that we're going to have in our applications. So that's it. That's the whole spiel for these things. So by default, now we have some static code analysis. So I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-B, build my application, and it looks like in the bottom left corner, the build has succeeded, so we're good. Now that's the basic one. That's just some built-in stuff. Let's add some third-party stuff, some stuff Microsoft hasn't even worked on. So I'm going to go over to my project. I'm going to right-click, and I always forget where it is. There we go, Manage NuGet Packages, and I'm going to search for Sonar. No, it's already there. Sonar Analyzer.C#. So I really like the Sonar class of analyzers. These are, as a company, you've probably heard of Sonar Cube, Sonar Source, Sonar Sharp. They use the name Sonar for for a bunch of things. It's one company. They actually have some pretty good stuff across different languages. Now in the C# world, they've made all or most, I think it's all, of their analyzers free. You can just add them right here into through a NuGet package, and there we go. It's there. I can go back to my C# project, scroll out just a little bit, and there we go. It has been added here, and now we have all of those analyzers. Now, I will say one of the downsides is, there are those features of the app. So if you're used to, using something like Sonar Cloud, I think is the product where you can say, hey, let's start fresh, ignore all of the possible errors that existed before, just show me the new stuff, things like that, right? But one of the downsides to having something like that is you need an extension to manage those. So we'll address that in a second. But first, I just want to talk a little bit more about these analyzers. So if you're not familiar with how this works, how you can just add a NuGet package and now all of a sudden you get compile time analysis of your code, static code analysis. The reason for that is through Roslyn analyzers. So 10 plus or minus some number of years ago, Microsoft completely rebuilt the compiler for C#. At some point, it was all in C++, because that's what they had to write when they created C#. And so now, or then, they thought, hey, let's go ahead and start fresh, completely redo it with all of the learnings they already had. And so the code name at the time for the compiler was called Roslyn, and so now the C# compiler is written in C#. So once they went through that process, they also were adding some number of features. So one of those features was the ability to just create your own analyzers. And so that's where we get things like, this NuGet package, the Sonar Analyzer.C# one, and a bunch of others too. StyleCop has essentially been rewritten to be a Roslyn analyzer, and a whole bunch of others. You can just kind of go ahead. Actually, just fun fact, if I go back to my NuGet package and I just browse and I say analyzer, we're going to find a whole bunch with, analyzers, message pack analyzer, all of these things. Serialog, so if you use Serialog a lot, these are analyzers. These are usually going to be suggestions, best practices, how they suggest you use their opinionated tool, stuff like that, right? So there we go. Now we've added that. Now I'm going to hit Control-Shift-B and we'll build, and it looks like we have some failures. Normally a lot of these are going to be warnings, but again, we've said, hey, let's treat all of our warnings as errors. Now, we are going to go ahead and fix these in this video, but I just want to call out a couple of things, right? Looking at all of these, the code, the status code, they all start with S whatever, right? And you can see the link and notice they are all Sonar related, right? It makes sense. They were all added when we added that NuGet package. But one of the things I kind of alluded to earlier is if you're using a product like Sonar Cloud or whatever, you need something installed on your machine to be able to talk to that product, right? You need an extension to Visual Studio, Writer, VS Code, whatever you're using, right? So if everyone on the team is working on this code, they all need to have that extension installed, which usually means they kind of always need to have Visual Studio because unfortunately other IDEs, right, VS Code or JetBrains Writer, they don't have the same level of support for a lot of these kinds of extensions in the C# world. Now, thankfully, we have another option in C#, and that is a .editorconfig file. So I'm just going to go ahead and right-click on the solution file, not the C# project, the solution. And I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to just go down to this new editor config. And by default, we get a big old file in here. So .editorconfig files, if you're not familiar with them, they are just kind of an open standard as far as, you know, hey, these are the rules that we want to enforce in our stuff, right, in our code. Different languages have different levels of support for them. So while these editor config files work throughout different languages, it just kind of depends on which language you're using in your tool set. C# thankfully has very good support for this. So you'll notice that as we are scrolling, right, we see some basics like, hey, indentation, right? And that'll work for like any language, right? Any IDE, as long as it knows about the file, you're good. But then we can scroll down. And now we see some very specific things to C# and .NET in general, right? So hiding members, etc., you know, all of this kind of stuff. And I can kind of scroll through it, and you see, hey, there's a lot of named things for this stuff, right? Just full-on names, but none of these are specific to anything third-party. So I'm just going to go to my other screen over here. I'm just going to copy-paste a file, and this is the editor config file I use. This is just something that has kind of been Frankenstein put together over the years to be the things that I do like and don't like. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and notice we have, you know, S whatever, etc., right? So I could say S125, and I think that was one of these, right? S.125. So that is essentially control, like that S125 error is the Roslyn one. No, sorry, is the Sonar one. Too many names of things. So if I go ahead and delete the comment right there and save and hit Control-Shift-B again, this will go ahead and build. Unfortunately, I have other rules in my editor config file, but that S125 one, notice that one is now gone. Right. So the thing with the editor config file is you can go ahead and add, remove things however you want, right? Here we said it's a suggestion. We could have left it at error, or it was probably a warning, and we're choosing to treat all warnings as errors, so it's a whole thing. But we're putting it back to suggestion, because honestly, I don't care about that one. I don't think it's too bad. Actually, you know what? That's not true, because I don't remember which one it is. Sonar, that. S125. Oops, okay. C# S125. Let's do that. Oh, man, I should... All right, I forgot what it is. I'm just going to go ahead, comment it back out. Is that actually one we care about, 125? Remove this comment. Oh, yeah, I hate commented out code. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that, because I don't care about that. We're gonna make sure that we are able to delete the commented code, right? We're going to enforce that. So, yeah, if you don't already use .editorconfig files to control those diagnostics, I highly recommend looking into them, figuring out as a team what are the ones you do care about, what are the ones you don't care about, just disable them. That's it, right? You can notice I don't care about S325. I don't know what that is. I don't care about it personally. You can look it up. Some of these down here I am forcing to be an error, right? And notice, you know, these are all, they all start with the S. That is Sonar analyzers. SA, I want to say SA is style cop, actually. So C# SA blah blah blah. Yeah, style cop warning SA 1403. So I am not adding style cop to this one. That's one of those, you know, personal preferences I kind of go back and forth on. Really, what I should do, I know I should do, I need to go through this editor config file again, because this is just something that I've added to and messed with over the years, and I'm sure preferences have changed. So either start with one, you know, from a person, a group you trust, or just start fresh and then edit from there. That's kind of my suggestion. All right, so now we have successfully added you know, static code analysis to our application. We've done it through two ways. We've added it through this built-in compiler flag. We have added some custom analyzers through a NuGet package. If we want to, we can add more. And we're now controlling all of those through a single file, .editorconfig file. And the important thing about this file is that this file is checked into source control, which means anyone on our team who's working on this code has the same rules, right? It's no longer going to be, hey, well, we have a new person on the team. We're still waiting for them to get, go through the normal install process and then get licenses because they need a license to install an extension. And then until then, it's iffy if their PR that they submit will even pass our rules, right? So it's one of those things where just at a minimum, for a fact, as long as everyone is using the code that's checked into source control, you're good. It's all being controlled together. So I feel like something like that is very helpful to teams, because I've been in that situation before that I just said about adding a new person to the team, and we just have issues for a little while. So the rest of this video, I'm just going to be going through and fixing all of these errors. So some of them are going to be very easy. Actually, it's early days. All of these are going to be very easy. But some of them we're actually going to ignore in a different way, not using the editor config file for personal reasons, right? For opinionated reasons. We'll get to that. So first, let's start with, let's start with this IDE 0058, because there's a lot of these and they're all in the same file, except for that first one, but we'll start with this one. So these are all in the extensions.cs file. So if you watched the previous video, this is the file that we copy-pasted from that extra project Aspire added to this. So what we want to do is, we want to essentially say, hey, we're doing something with the return. Now, normally, this is exactly what I would do to fix it. I would just say, hey, I get it. I know that this method is returning something. As a developer, I'm just going to say to myself, to others on my team, we know it's returning something. We do not care about that value, right? That's what we're doing with this underscore equals, right? We're discarding that return value. Problem is, I don't want to start doing that to everything, right? Because that's just noise, again, right? The purpose of these videos is to say, hey, it's very easy to add that stuff, but we don't want that. As developers, that's just extra stuff that we know we don't need. So we have a few other options. If I hit Control Dot over here on Visual Studio, I get some options. One of them is to suppress configure issues. So we'll talk about this IDE 58. We have three options. We can ignore it in source with a suppression file, or with an attribute. So the first one, this is one I've done a decent amount in the past, and I'll still do it depending on the code, right? Where it makes sense. I can just ignore it using a comment. Now, if I were to do this here, I would have to essentially cut and paste this and wrap it around the entire file, which not a bad idea, right? Like it's there, it works. We know, hey, we know that for the purposes of this file, we just don't care about it. That's one option. Not going to do that here. So we've got that one. The other option, and I'm kind of going to go back and forth between these two, but this other option is using a suppression file. And so that should have added, did that add it? That did not add it. All right, one more time. Suppression file, there we go. So apply this, and this added a global suppressions.c# file, or .cs. And what we're doing is we're adding a attribute to the assembly to say, all right, we're going to go ahead and ignore this error. Now, we should add a justification, right? All of it, we shouldn't ever just leave this pending. We should say why we're choosing to not care about this error. And then the nice thing about this being in the global suppression file is that we can say where this applies. So in this case, we're defaulting it specifically to that line in that method. We can actually change the scope to a couple things. We can say it's to the method, to the class. We can even say to the namespace and anything below it. That's honestly, most of the time, that's what I do, namespace and descendants. We're not going to do that for this one. We are instead, just for simplicity, we're going to just do it at the class level, because I feel like that's more discoverable, right? For as other people on the team can see this, it's easier to understand the attribute. So we're going to go ahead and do this as an attribute. Now I'm actually going to move this up to the class level because we have multiple methods there. And so the justification for this is going to be everything returns itself, doesn't actually matter here. And then I'm going to go back and fix my typo. There we go. Cool. So now we have an attribute saying that we choose not to care about a specific error, which is the fact that our methods are returning things, because yeah, we don't care. I'm gonna delete this comment because we do not care at all about what's being returned, right? Well, like, it's adding to that value to the builder and then it's returning itself. We don't need it. All right, while we're here, I'm gonna delete this commented out code line because we don't need that. All right, awesome. So we have that, and it looks like I have one more error down here in this file. Cool, I'm gonna go ahead and delete that commented out code. All right, I'll hit Control-Shift-B, and it looks like perfect. We're down to just 4 more. That's awesome because we had a ton of errors in that one file. All right, let's just go through these in order. Very first one, let's see. We had some exception middleware. This is a good one. I definitely should have done this sooner. So let's call this builder equals new string builder, and the builder down here dot add this, and oh, that's what we care about. And then down here for the message, it's just, you know, 2 string on the builder. That's it. Let's see, what are you complaining about? Doesn't have an add. Oh, it's append. Whoops. Not add. I was thinking of a list. All right, cool. So that should have gotten rid of that one. Perfect. So we have the next one. Make the class name end with exception. All right, I guess. I mean, personally, I think if you have an abstract class that's a base class, I like using the .base, but it's a rule. I'm not going to fight it that much. Yeah, sure, it's fine. So let's rename it HTTP base exception. We'll call it that. All right. And this is the kind of stuff, when I say go to your application and you see like the 200 warnings, and I feel like it'll take you a lot quicker to get through these than you think, it's because of this stuff, right? A lot of these, you can ignore them or just, you know, rename something. It's fine. All right, let's get to the next one. Return value is never used. You know what? That's true. So we actually have 2 options here for this this span that we created in the previous week's video. Now this file is eventually going away. I don't care about it, right? For demo purposes, we just set this up last week just to make sure things work. So we have 2 options. We can either use the discard, or in this case, I actually like the idea of just attaching it to there. So this is going to create a span object, and this is going to add to that span object and return it, so we still have the same value. So I'm good with that. Control-Shift-B, let's run this, and the very final one, it looks like instead of run, we want to use run async. I'm not going to ask why. I don't care. There's probably a reason. I am curious why the default template from Microsoft says app.run, but like I said, I'm not going to argue with it. It's fine. Cool, so our build has succeeded. We have now added static code analysis to our project, and we have actually changed our code to follow the rules of that. So I'm going to hit F5. This is just a sanity check one last time. Let me make sure everything works, right? It's the stuff we always should do. So let's go to, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Let's go to the Swagger. We'll hit that get. We'll just execute it. Cool, we got a response. Perfect. So that is our code. That is this session on static code analysis. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, insults, etc., social media, or comments in the video. All right, take care, everyone.